Welcome to exercise 2E, special products. Earlier in the chapter we've learnt some rules, we've learnt to add, subtract surds, we've learnt to multiply and divide surds. We also learnt that we should always simplify surds where possible. And all these little rules are going to come together in 2E. Now in algebra, you started to learn about perfect squares, which is an example here. And you also learn about the difference of two squares. Now they're just little applications that allow us to do things a little bit faster. I'm not going to jump to them right now, but I am going to look at doing some expansion of the brackets so that we can look to simplify some of these questions. So in example 20, we have the square root of 5 plus the square root of 3 all squared. This just means we have the square root of 5. Apologies for the writing there. The square root of 5 plus the square root. Let's go again. The square root of 5 plus the square root of 3 multiplied by the square root of 5 plus the square root of 3. So the squared up here is telling us it's times by itself. You may have noticed now that this looks very similar to when we did binomial expansion. So what I can do is we're going to break up the first one here and multiply them each by the second bracket. So I'm going to take the square root of 5 and it's going to get multiplied by the square root of 5 plus the square root of 3. And now I'm going to take the square root of 3 and multiply it by the square root of 5 plus the square root of 3. I've split up the first one. There's the first square root of 5, and I've split up the second square root of 3, keeping its sign attached. All right, now we can use the distributive law, so we can multiply our four multiplications, 1 and 2, and 3 and 4, and that will help us to expand. Using some rules here, the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is the number 5. 5, the square root of 5 times the square root of 3 is the same as saying the square root of 15. Moving along, the square root of 3 times the square root of 5, square root of 15. Square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the number 3. Collect like surds. 5 plus 3, if we're unsure, we've got like ones here, and we also have some like ones in the middle. 5 plus 3 is the number 8. One lot of square root 15 plus another one would give us 2 lots of square root 15, and it's been simplified there. All right, we'll have a look at another example. 3 square root 2 minus 2 square root 3 all squared. So knowing that, we can rewrite it as 3 square root 2 minus 2 square root 3 times by itself 3 square root 2 minus 2 square root 3. We're going to take our first term and multiply it by the second brackets. 3. We're going to take the second term. Notice I took the negative with it. We're going to have minus 2 root 3 brackets 3 root 2 minus 2 root 3. Just got to be careful here. We're starting to see a few negatives. We've got one here, and that's where we split up the first bracket. We have our 4 multiplications to complete now. The first one, 3 root 2 times 3 root 2. times by itself. 3 times 3 is 9. Root 2 times root 2 is 2, so we have 9 times 2, which is 18. Minus 3 root 2 times negative 2 root 2 times the number parts first. 3 times minus 2. Minus 6 times the number part, we would get 6. All right, being careful over here. And times the number part. Oh, that was the second multiplication. Now we're going to do the third, followed by the fourth. Negative 2 times 3, negative 6. Root 3 times root 2, root 6. Probably starting to see some patterns here. And now I've got negative 2 times negative 2, which is the number 4. But I also have root 3 times root 3, which is 3. So I have 4 times 3, which would be 12. So we have 4 times 3 is 12. Now collect like. And we have those two alike. We also have some like third parts here. Be careful with the minuses. 18 plus 12 is 30. Negative 6, take away another 6, would give us minus 12 root 6. And the root 6 can't be simplified. See, questions like this, as you start seeing patterns, we can do them a little bit faster. Notice that this was a minus b. In our question we had 3 root 2 minus 2 root 3. We had minus 2ab. Well, also here we had our minus. So just be a little bit careful on these. Look to simplify. Remember, you've got 4 multiplications when we have 2 sets of brackets. All right. Once again, it says you should always look to express your answer in simplest form. So there might be a step to do after. So it wants to expand. I'm going to write this out as 2 square root 3, write the question, plus 4 square root 6 squared. All right. So we have 2 root 3 plus 4 root 6 times by itself. So I'm working a bit faster now. Hopefully you're understanding some of the steps. I'm going to break up the first one and multiply them both by the second brackets. 2 square root 3 bracket 2 square root 3 plus 4 square root 6. It's mine. There's the first 2 root 3 that was broken up. The second one here, 4 square root 6. And the second bracket, 2 square root 3 plus 4 square root 6. That was from the first bracket broken up. We split them. So our multiplication here, 2 times 2. So we're multiplying here first, there second, third, fourth. 2 times 2 is 4. Root 3 times root 3 is just the number 3. So we have 4 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12. Here we have 2 times 4, which is 8. And we have to, our square roots aren't going to cancel each other here. So we have 8 times in the number parts, root 18. I think that might simplify later. Let's move along. 4 root 6, 4 times 2 is 8. Root 18 again, that's the 6 times the 3. Plus 4 times 4 is 16. 16, root 6 times root 6 is 6, so we have 16 times 6, which is 96. All right, so I'm going to look to simplify some numbers here first. 12 and 96. So 12 plus 96 will give us 108. Now, I have 8 root 16 plus another 8 root 18, root 18, would give me 16 root 18. This question hasn't been finished because the square root of 18 can be simplified to 9 times 2. So I'm going to add an extra step in here. 108 plus 16 times the square root of 9 times 2. The 9 times 2 makes up the 18. So we'll move this down in a minute. So we always look to simplify. Now I can only add and subtract like surds. So the square root of 9 is going to come out. So I have 108 plus 16 times 3. That's because the square root of 9 makes 3 square root 2. There. And we can simplify here. So I have 108. This still stayed the same. It's unlike, but 6 times 3 is 48 root 2. And I've simplified my response there. If I just saw me rub this out, this one is a difference of 2 squares, or dots, difference of 2 squares. It's the third dot point up here. When we have a minus b, a plus b, we can jump to a squared minus b squared. It allows us to do things faster. So with that in mind, I have root 7 take 5, root 7 plus 5. So in A, you could do the multiplications, but you'll end up in the same place. Root 7 take 5, root 7 plus 5. I go, fantastic, it's a dots. Therefore, I can write it as, root 7 squared minus 5 squared. And simplifying that, this was rule 1 from a couple of exercises ago, is the number 7 minus 25. And when we do this, I'd end up with minus 18. All right, having a look at B, 5 square root 6 minus 2 square root 5. And the other one we have is 5 square root 6 plus 2 square root 5. Once again, because of the plus and minus and the same numbers, I've gone fantastic. This is a dots. So I'm going to write it as 5 square root 6 squared minus 2 square root 5 squared. Back to rule 1, where this 2 belongs to the 5 and it belongs to the 6 here. So we're just going to 5, I'm going to write it out as 5 squared times 6. The inverse cancel each other, minus 2 squared times 5. So the 2 is just remembering that the 2 is acting on here, and the 2 is here, here and here. And we can start to simplify. So 5 squared times 6, which is 25 times 6, 150, minus 2 squared, which is 4 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20, and we'll have an answer of 130. Difference of 2 squares. Similarly, you could do 4 multiplications. You could split the front and multiply by each term by the second bracket. But as I said before, you'd actually end up with the same answer if you followed all the steps correctly. Difference of 2 squares allows us to do some of the work faster. Thank you.